Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for Age of Sigmar from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 78. It's an Age of Sigmar primary show. We're going to talk about the three modes of GW play, as well as the FAQ for the AOS. As usual, I'm your host, Chris, at CanHammerChris on Twitter, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr.
Logan, at OnePlusLogan on Twitter.
Our website is www.oneplusarmor.com if you want more information about our YouTube videos and so on. So this show is breaking our usual bi-weekly release schedule. We've been doing a ton of 40K lately, and a lot of people being a little bit upset about that, but we figured, since we pre-planned all of our releases, we have it all figured out, and this stuff dropped. We're like, we'll do a bonus show. We will talk about Age of Sigmar because for once this guy's actually excited, which is really
you have
good.
no idea.
Yeah, it's really good. So I guess we're going to start off with, we're going to go into what kind of hobby we've been up to. Start with you, bud.
All right, just putting the finishing touches on the Tau. Been working on some OSL. We talked about that on the last show last week, as it's only been a couple days. Past that, it's just been screwing around, really. Trying to line up matches for a little bit of practice, talking over CanHammer team tournament with the team. Not too much on the hobby side. I know the rest of the team, for my team at least, has been working all hours of the day to get their armies finished. So I'm happy I finished a couple weeks in advance.
Yeah. I came to the sad realization that my army will not be 100% completed. It'll be three colors, and the bases will be done. They're actually really nice resin bases. I think I did up for them.
What, those are Dragon Forge, was it?
Yeah, he's really awesome. So I ordered a bunch of Dragon Forge bases. They come in. They don't need they need very little flash cleanup, which is really nice. I got the city bases because there's some orange rust in them, which I thought would add some color. So I did basically brown to bone. Then I did a dark gray for all the stone and some orange for the rust. I don't know if you can see that on the live stream. Probably can't. And then I did three Nurglings, the old metal ones. I had a bag of them per base. Now they're green, washed, dry brushed with 2 layers of green on top of that. I tried doing some experiments with that Nurgle Rot GW paint.
It's tough to use.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah, apparently as you use it more, you get more used to it and it becomes better. But everyone I know who's used it just for a day or so hates it, and then they just sort of stick with it and they find ways to mix it with other stuff and it becomes pretty good.
I just don't like the shade
half
of
with
green.
Rise of Rust apparently it's really solid.
Yeah, maybe. I don't like the shade of green. It didn't give me the effect I wanted. I think a brown wash would be good. So I did one complete Nurgling base, and that's when I was like, ugh, I got to do more than just that on my army. So I'm going to end up probably just painting more of the details instead of just doing like a goopy model, which didn't quite work out. I've also been finishing up my conversions for my Furies. These guys are going to... So my whole demon army is going to act as dual Age of Sigmar 40k demons. Sadly, Nurglings aren't so hot in Age of Sigmar, so I was like, I'm doing 12 bases.
15 bases, yeah. 12, 15.
What? I got, 12 units of 3 bases.
Oh, God. So 36 bases?
Yeah, but there are only
my
3
God.
metal Nurglings per base. Yeah, I bought a big bag of Adepticon a few years ago. Who knew they'd come in handy, right?
That's awesome.
So I took some Demonettes, and I shaved down their shoulder bits, and I took the Tyrannid wings from, was it the Gargoyles?
Yep.
And, I kind of gave them so they look like they have wings. They kind of look like the monkeys from Wizard of Oz a little bit, I think. And I base coated them blue, washed them. I'm going to put them on their bases and do some highlighting. I'm basically at the stage now, which is how I do all my armies from now on, is I do like the bases really nice. I do the model up to like wash stage. And then I don't highlight it till later because I want to get them playable so I can bring them to an event. It might hurt my paint score, but at least then I can highlight at my leisure with the kids and stuff. Sometimes I just can't finish the armies like I used to be able to.
Yeah, well, it's better than a 0-2 or having to leave models behind.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is the way this comp is set up is you get 50% of the score just from getting 3 colors and based. Yeah. So I'm at 20 out of 46, and then you get like 3 points for a nice display board, which I have. If your bases are exceptional, you get an additional 2 or 3 points, which I'll get. And then so I started adding it up, and I was like, wow, if I pull all-nighters this week, I'm really only adding 4 to 5 points to my army.
Yeah, it's pretty generous. Like, we were working it through for our team, and I'm the weakest, and I think I'm at a 33 out of 40 for the painting. And, I mean, you guys on the stream and Twitter and everything have seen my army, so it's good. I mean, the battle is going to be getting, I think it's like 37 to 40 is where it's really, really rough to get those points.
Yeah, he sounded really conceited there, but he didn't mean that his army was that good. He
No,
meant
my army's not
the,
great. I mean,
but no, his
the
army
paint
looks
scoring is
great. I'm just kidding.
generous.
I'm just kidding. It's just it sounded really conceited, and I was like, but that's not what he
No, no,
meant.
I was surprised. Like, I mean, the other guys on the team, I'm dragging down the average, but like
Well, it
Nick,
is average too, right? So
yeah,
it's a
it's team
team
average. So our team average, I think, works out to like a 30 something. So not bad. I mean, I'll take 85% overall for the team. So that's good.
Yeah, I think ours will be around the 32 to 34 range as well, maybe 31. I didn't quite figure it out. My Eldar, I feel, should get really top, and then my Demon should get like a 30, so it'll even out. It just depends if Chastenate pulls his weight. That's the
Oh
big.
yeah, he's a good painter. Good painter. We'll see.
Yeah, but
He gets
his
it
arm
done.
is he just base coated it green yesterday, so I feel for him. He's pulling the Chris Haynes weekly there. He's gonna be
Yeah.
painting a lot.
He's got a couple days. Nick and I had to get everything ready for Thursday night, for tomorrow night actually, because we're going down to film with Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games and Mini Wargaming on Friday. So we've got a very full weekend.
Not in the same spot, right? You're doing like different.
We're filming with Ash on Thursday and Mini Wargaming on Friday.
Oh, okay, okay. So that's gonna
But
be
they're like 40 minutes away from each other, so it's perfect. It's all within about an hour
yeah, yeah.
of the
He's
tournament.
he's Mississauga or something, isn't he, Ash?
Niagara.
We're not allowed to say it. Niagara area, and then they're Welland. Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds
they're
good.
pretty close.
So that's exciting. So stay tuned for that. We did have a few 40K bat reps hit the stream, a few AOS ones to follow. So we're going to go on to new releases and news. And this is going to be entirely AOS. We covered 40K last week. We're going to cover 40K next week. We just said, get out of the way, 40K. So our first one is we want to give a shout out to itoysoldiers.com for your community needs. It lets you do a blog. You can do events, advertise events, get points and things like that, and set up your own little hobby profile. So check it out, iToy Soldiers. We're also going to give the Geeks of the North a shout out. They're a podcast out of Montreal. It does general gaming. They give us a lot of support, so we're going to shoot some support their way as well. And then we're going to get into AOS. And so this is the big Age of Sigmar news. This is probably the reason why Logan's excited. So there is 3 new ways to play Age of Sigmar that are coming rumored June 11th.
The date is the rumor, by the way, not the 3 modes of play.
Oh, yeah.
That's been confirmed.
The 3 modes of play are confirmed. The date is June 11th. The first one is the mode is open play. Collect your force in battle. Play with an army on any board with any number of players. So that's basically what they have now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do what you want. There's going to be, open play. Next one, narrative play. Recreate great battles. Create a campaign that tells a story. That exists as well, man. All those nice hardcover books have campaigns and scenarios you can play in them. They're fantastic. They're fun. They're very characterful and fluffy. The only problem I have with the campaigns from the story is that if you don't own the armies in the story, or none of your friends do,
Yeah.
you can still play them. It's just it's not the same when you just read a novel about Treeman and Stormcast, and you're like, I only have Stormcast, I don't have Treeman.
Exactly. It was like that with the end time stuff as well, right? Like we were we were a bit too ambitious. We were planning to do battle reports and find people for everything with the end time stuff when it came out. And we got about, I think, a third of them done. Just never bothered to finish it out, right? Because it was, Cetra leads battle against Nagash. And, like, I own Nagash, but we couldn't track anyone down. Cetra.
Yeah.
Or there was the Plutonian one, and we had to reschedule it, like, 6 times. It was really tough. So I understand that. But if you're the collector, you've got all this stuff. You've got the group of friends who's been playing for 10, 15 years. You've got everyone.
Yeah,
So,
or
it's
if you
awesome.
don't even care, sometimes you can just be like, well, we'll
Oh, yeah,
substitute
it's proxy,
Skaven
right?
in for Chaos. But for me, because I've been reading, I know the Age of Sigmar novels are written for it seems like they're written for like, they're not an advanced reading
No, they're both
novel,
important, right?
but I love them. And
Yeah.
I don't really care. Like, I don't need intense character development. I just need to like generally know the story, generally know the world, have lots of violence, and I'm happy. So that's pretty cool. And then the third mode of play, which is the fantastic one, and this is the one that's been missing and everybody's pissed off about, is what, Logan?
This is matched play. Balanced and tactically challenging. Designed for tournaments. Points included.
Yeah,
So,
and they put that in brackets. Points are promised.
specifically called out to points, which is its own thing. That's not what I'm super excited about. Because, I mean, we can have that discussion as we go through this. But what I'm really excited about is it's the guys from Bad Dice and CanHammer, apparently, but apparently this has also been confirmed. were consulted
And FaceHammer, I believe,
FaceHammer.
Russ Veal, who also it was basically the South Coast GT organizers, which was Russ Veal, Dan Heelan, and I think Wayne was there as well. Wayne Kemp. We met Dan and Wayne at Adepticon. Actually, did you meet them?
I think I must have. I was hanging out with you most of the time.
Yeah. Well, they were around, and then it was Ben Curry from Bad Dice.
Yep.
He was also at Adepticon a few years ago. So yeah, and that
Yeah.
I believe that was confirmed, and they're doing a joint three-way podcast on it pretty soon.
Exactly. So I mean, my guess, and I think it's a pretty safe guess on this, is that what we're going to see is going to be pretty close to South Coast GT Comp, which, for all intents and purposes, makes Age of Sigmar a really solid game. So
Yeah.
if we have that as the official way forward, we get two things. One is we get a really good game. Two, we get a really good standardized. Because that's the problem with Age of Sigmar right now is if I go to store A, B, or C, I don't know what game I'm playing.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm playing South Coast, I'm playing the comp we made, or what's the other one? SDK, any of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
SDK is being debunked, and then there's the one out of Quebec.
Yeah, it's all wildly different, and they all have their own merits. Don't get me wrong, but it all makes for a completely different game. So if we can get the entire community standardized on one, like we had for the most part in fantasy, right? Like you had a couple edge cases, at least in North America. You had a little bit of Swedish, but for the most part, at least around here, some of the Northeast U.S. it was uncomped, or very very slightly when End Times came out. But it was one of those two, with Swedish being the very small one. Or to my understanding, if you're playing in Europe, it's basically like all ETC for the most
Yeah.
part, and a little bit of Swedish. So if we can get to that same level for Age of Sigmar, I think that's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Uh,
The one thing that I really am excited about this, and I hope that this is like me speculating. This is kind of BS,
yeah, this
but
is all speculation. Other than what we explicitly confirmed, this is us
well,
just talking about what we
yeah,
know.
those three modes are confirmed. The rest is speculation. But this is how I speculated. So the way South Coast GT Comp works is they have a document. They say, okay, this War Scroll is worth this number of points or pool choices for this model. Depends how you. To me, a pool choice is a point, right? It's like it's all
Basically, yeah.
points. But and it's in one document. And I hope that GW keeps that document and says, this is the tournament document with points. The War Scrolls are the rules and the fluff, but these are the points documents. So we can take this one document and we can change it. We can add and change points. And
Exactly.
points are no longer relevant and they're no longer in the printed material. So, we can write this really cool model, write the points in our tournament document. And if it turns out he's busted, we don't have to basically correct all your hardcover books or
Exactly.
which is what was keeping them down before is they'd be like, well, we don't want to change what's in the books because it's like we sold those and that mentality is changing, which we'll talk about later in this segment, but
Yeah.
in the show, sorry, at the end in the FAQ. But for the most part, it'd be nice just to keep the points separate. That way,
And I think
that's
that's the best idea, right? Because that's a similar attitude to what a lot of the 40K comp has done, whether it's ITC or ETC or whatever, is you have the list building restrictions rather than more arbitrary things like, say, your scatter bike with a jet bike with a scatter laser isn't, however many points it is, 27 or 31, whatever. It's now 50 points, right? 'Cause it's arbitrary. You're explicitly changing something. You have to reference multiple places just to get your point costs instead of this is how you design your list. Go forth and have fun.
yeah.
So I think keeping those two separate and keeping the points in a living document is pretty much the perfect scenario for that.
And it also this is the thing too. If when and this is the issue I'm having, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I keep saying that, but the when you want to play like I go, let's play South Coast GT comp. A lot of people are like, screw it, I don't want to play a fan made comp.
Yeah,
They may
and
be
that's
awesome. I don't want to play a fan made comp. I want it from GW, and there is a lot of that online
yeah.
right now. Everybody's like, I don't care. Like GW's could be worse than theirs. I'd rather play something from them.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? And that's the same
That's not
argument
my
and,
opinion.
and stumbling block that's been with Ninth Age for a lot of it. Like we have our own opinions on it. We've talked about it a bit on the show, but that's a huge part of it, right? Is it's fan made. It's got nothing to do like there's no company explicitly supporting that rule set. It's a little different for the Age of Sigmar comp because there is a base for it, but I mean my argument around that is just that if I'm going to play a game that somebody has gone out and made and I want that kind of rule set, I'm probably not going to play something that a company doesn't support.
Yeah.
So if GW gets behind this, which it really looks like is what's happening, that's perfect, right? And with everything else that's been going on with GW, I have nothing but high hopes about this. They've had a huge turnaround. We'll talk about that coming up with the new models, the rules, the FAQs, very very tiny bit of 40k news just to touch on that's directly related to this as well. it's everything's looking bright. Sunny ways. Sunny
Yeah,
ways.
it's good, and CEO change. That's all done. They said that the old guy was burned and got upset with the community, and which is fine. And at least now they're fixing it. And this is the best news I've ever heard because I'm like now I'm actually able to have AOS conversations with people. Oh yeah, there is actually a compact coming with points, and they've changed the way they're doing it. And I hope they do that with 40K actually, some kind of
They do their own tournament system for it.
so the way it is right now with this, if this, even though it's a speculation, now that I know that there's three modes of play, points are coming, army building's coming, and the one thing that really, this is an exact quote from their thing, balanced and tactically challenging.
Yeah.
So they are basically saying our match play is going to be balanced and tactically challenging. That's fantastic, right? That's
Yeah.
like now they might not deliver on that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that line alone means they're going to do something to make it balanced, fixed. Armies should be evenly matched. It should be somewhat stressful when you get to the higher table. Like it should be nice and tight.
Exactly.
I don't
Yeah.
mean stressful in a bad way. I mean like
It's gonna be
good
intense.
way.
Be
Intense.
intense.
I should say
Yeah.
intense. So you know what? In a year or something, if this turns out well, maybe when people say, "Oh, they're going to AOS 40K," it's no longer a negative; it's a
Yeah,
positive,
yeah,
right?
exactly. If this works out the way it's aiming to, if they're gonna AOS 40K and that turns into them meaning we're gonna release a comp pack developed by the community and balance things, bring it on, man.
Excellent. Yeah, Eldar jet bikes cost 300 points for three. I'm just kidding. That's ridiculous. But anyway, so we're gonna move on. So we talked a little bit about the three new books, Grand Alliance Destruction, which I'm pre-ordering right now because it's so good. $20 for all the Grand Alliance Destruction battle scrolls. Fantastic.
Now there's the other new stuff we're gonna talk about for them as well.
Yeah, and then they have the Iron Jaws book, and then but we're gonna go into a little bit of the new rules because hell, we're back. Like we don't have to talk 40K, so we can take our time. So
Exactly.
I'm gonna let you talk about. So I've synopsized most of this, but I'm gonna let you talk about the two big guys because those are the ones that you
Yeah,
seem
these are the
really.
ones I'm happy about.
You're like drawn to these models, and I love the model. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
I love big stompy guys,
So-
right? Like in the 8th edition, I loved the Demon Princes going back to like 5th edition when I started playing. I was all about Zacharias or like the 1400 point Vampire Lord on a zombie dragon. That's my thing.
of course you were. Of course.
Before
You
we talk about these, the only piece of 40K news I want to point out here is that apparently this week or early next week we are getting an FAQ for 40K based on the community feedback. So same idea as the AOS one we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's one thing people are gonna have to get used to is that AOS is basically the struggling new focus of the company, so they're gonna put that out first, and then 40K will follow.
Which is fantastic. So let's dive into this. So I'm reading this off my tablet. I apologize, everyone. All the rules for these guys are already in the app, which is awesome. They are free.
Yeah.
You can get them. So we're going to talk about the big stompy guy. And first off, the model for this is badass. Like super badass. I'll put this up here.
But which one are you doing? Are you doing the Mega
I'm doing
Boss or
Gordrak
the
first.
Gordrak? Okay.
Gordrak. This guy is amazing. So we've got Gordrak, the Fist of Gork. 15 wounds, 12-inch movement at full wounds, going down to 4 when he's taken 13 plus.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
3 plus save, 8 bravery. His attacks. He's got a missile weapon, 8-inch range called Innard Bursting Bellow, which I'm hoping is coming from the dragon and not him. So 8-inch range, 1 attack, 2 plus to hit, 3 plus to wound, -1 rend, d6 wound. Pretty awesome. d6 damage, I should say. His melee weapons, he's got a couple here. These all stacked together. None of these are options. These are all in one place. We've got his two axes. He's got Smasha and Cunnin. At face value, these may sound a little lackluster, but we'll talk about the special rules for them.
But even just that 1-inch range, that's 10 attacks.
Yeah, that's the thing. It gets better too.
Hits on 2 plus, wounds on 3 plus. Like, oh,
Yep. So Smasha, 5 attacks, 2 plus, 3 plus, with -1 rend, 2 damage, solid. Cunnin, 1-inch range, 5 attacks, plus 3 plus, no rend, 1 damage. Whatever, it's 5 attacks.
yeah.
And then we've got Big Teeth's Bladed Tail. 1-inch range, 3 attacks, hits on 4s, wounds on 3s, -1 rend, 1 damage. So this guy's pretty stompy to begin with, right? Like
That's 18 attacks.
that's 18 attacks. Like just from that profile, if we're talking like let's say 8th edition points, because points are relevant again, right? I'd say this guy's probably like I don't know 400 points just based on that, 500 points maybe. Let's
Yeah,
go
maybe
into his
more.
special ability, maybe more. He can fly.
which is pretty good in this. Well, it's
Yeah,
it's good, but
it's
it's like
good. You can
still
avoid
only
you can
12
avoid
inches,
stuff,
right?
right? Yeah, you can
Yeah.
avoid it though. From that profile, if we're talking like let's say 8th edition points, because points are relevant again, right? I'd say this guy's probably like I don't know 400 points just based on that, 500 points maybe. Let's
Yeah,
go into
maybe
his
more,
special ability, maybe more. He can fly.
which is pretty good in this. Well, it's
Yeah,
it's it's good, but
it's
it's
good.
like still only
You can
12
avoid
inches,
stuff,
right?
right? Yeah, you can
Yeah.
avoid it though. Smasha. Smasha is filled with the brutal power of Gork, making it especially lethal to enemy champions. Wound rolls of 6 or more inflict D3 mortal wounds if the target is a hero instead of their normal wounds.
Yeah, so he's gonna be killing Nagash, man.
He's popping heroes left and right. Cunnin. Cunnin is filled with the Cunnin power of Mork and seeks to destroy enemy wizards. Wound rolls of 4 or more inflict D3 mortal wounds if the target is a wizard.
Fight Nagash with this guy, dude.
Yeah, you're chopping him up. Chopping him up. Next ability, we have Strength from Victory. The more fights a Megaboss wins, this is shared with the Megaboss we'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. We'll just
Yep.
kind of gloss over that later.
If Gordrak makes an attack with Smasha or Cunnin that slays an enemy hero, add 1 to his wounds characteristic and the attack characteristic of the weapon that caused that inflicted the killing wound. So he gets better as he goes through.
Yeah.
Then we've got Destructive Bulk, and this one is hilarious. After Big Teeth completes a charge move, pick an enemy unit within 1 inch and roll the number of dice shown on the Destructive Bulk
Oh
on
my
the table
god,
above,
I know.
which scales from 8 dice down to 4 dice. 4 dice being the lowest. For each roll of 4 or more, the enemy unit suffers a mortal.
Yeah, that's 2 to 4 mortal wounds within an inch. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's with all of his other attacks. It's crazy. Then we get on the Rampage. If the wounds inflicted by Big Thief's Destructive Bulk attack mean that there are no enemy models left within 3 inches of him, then he can immediately make another charge move. Big Thief can make any number of charge moves like this in a single turn, so long as each results in all enemy models within 3 inches being slain. Goodbye, MSU. Holy crap.
Yeah, but the thing is though is like that sounds crazy, but I found the rest of the army very well, minus the one mount, guys, very slow. So I
Yeah.
feel like he might be off on his own for this, and this
Sorry.
might cause him to eat it.
Oh yeah, well he doesn't have to charge, right?
He doesn't have to,
doesn't
but
have to, but still, that's a really cool ability if you can chain stuff together. Next up, we've got his command ability, Voice of Gork. Gordrak's bellow carries the elemental force of his brutal god and inspires his forces to surge into the enemy, hacking, bludgeoning, and stomping with abandon. Once per battle in your hero phase, you can pick a destruction unit, not orc or auric or anything, destruction, within 20 inches of Gordrak. In the following charge phase, that unit can declare a charge if it is within 18 inches of an enemy,
yeah.
and you can roll 3 dice to determine the charge distance. In addition, the unit makes 2 extra attacks with each of its melee weapons in the following combat phase. If the unit you chose is part of a War Scroll battalion, then these benefits apply to all other units from the battalion.
Yeah, that alone is disgusting. But then there's also like the new not black orcs, but they're man, why am I forgetting this? Evi orcs or whatever.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
got
yeah.
a rule where
The
they take the
brutes.
drummer and they get the extra 2 inches to charge. So you're like, oh, those guys are going 3d6 plus 2 inches. Ugh.
Yeah, you're just flying
And they get
across
to
the
move their
table.
4 inches in the movement phase. So that's like a reach. That's a lot of reach. So what's your take on this guy in game?
This guy. So keep in mind, I don't play this game as much as Chris does, but this guy has everything that makes me excited for Maul. He's awesome looking. He's really, really strong. He's super mobile. Like he's a one-man Death Star.
Yeah.
That's what I love. I love hero. I'm one of those guys. I love me some hero hammer. So I give this guy an A+. Like he's got stuff to deal with everything, right? He's you can buff him up. He's got a great armor save. The only thing he doesn't have is a way to negate mortal.
But that's the thing too. Whenever you have a 3+ save on a figure, that's like it's so easy to give him a 2+ that it's not even funny. And then now you can give him a 1+ and he can't be hurt. But
Exactly. And we'll talk about that coming up.
so cool. So I guess the Mega Boss on the Mod Crusher is very similar to that guy, right? But maybe toned down.
Yeah,
So I
he's a more calm version of it with. But destructive bulk is the same. On the rampage is the same. Strength from victory is the same. The profile is largely similar. The inner bursting bellow is there. There's a slightly weaker version of the weapons. It's basically the same profile. It hits on 3s instead of 2s. It doesn't get the mortal wounds against heroes or anything.
It's one less wound, but
One less wound. Yeah, sorry, it's one less wound. And then the
His command ability is pretty good. It's the same as the regular Mega Boss one.
right. So if a Mega Boss on Mach Russia uses this ability, count up the number of Iron Jaws units within 15 inches of them at the start of the combat phase and roll the dice. If the roll is less than or equal to the number of units, then this model and all models in those units make one extra attack with each of their melee weapons in the combat phase. If the roll is a 6 and there are at least 6 Iron Jaws units within 15, they make 2 extra attacks instead of 1.
That's like a once a game thing. You're gonna have your whole army make 2 extra attacks once per game turn. 15 inches is pretty decent range on this guy. He's pretty big. He can move
It's a big
around.
base too, right? Or big
Yeah,
model.
and like the only thing is you need like 6 Iron Jaws units. So part of me is like because obviously this stuff just came out. We haven't had time to really play with the new orc stuff, destruction stuff, or rook stuff. But part of me is like maybe this army's meant to be MSU. You have like so if you take a lot of units, you take maybe this guy, the war boss, then you take the other special character guy. You could like theoretically buff a lot of stuff, give them all like +3 attacks, maybe even +4 attacks. They're all bumping up. It could be a really nasty list. So I guess we're gonna move on. The the next one I want to talk about is the Orc War Chanter. He's pretty cool. He gives within 10 inches an Iron Jaw unit +1 to hit. He's got the standard character profile like you would get for like 4 attacks, 3+4+. He's nothing special. 6 wounds. Very similar to Stormcast Eternal character. But he yeah, just gives +1 to hit to all rolls made for a unit within 1 Iron Jaw unit within 10 inches. So that's pretty good.
Hang him out at the back, bubble wrap him.
He's more like, so I was like, okay, the one list I made, because I have a ton of old Black Orcs. I was like, this guy is more like if you're going to do like the big unit. I was thinking like for an Adepticon doubles list where you're not allowed to take any really big characters, you're only allowed little ones. This guy would be good behind like a big unit, give them +1 to hit, and then you take the War Boss guy that you were talking about, and you can take him on the big guy or the little guy, it's the same ability, and then give them +1 to hit, and they get +2 inches to charge. Could be pretty good. So that's the War Chanter. Next guy, and this guy is sold out online. This part blew my mind. The Auroch Weird Knob Shaman didn't even get past pre-order stage.
Wow.
So this guy's really awesome. He's my favorite model. I wish I would have pre-ordered him earlier.
It looks pretty funny.
So he can, his big ability is he adds 1 to the casting roll if there are 10 or more Auroch models within range. Yeah, that's what he looks like on the live stream there. So if you have 10 orc models within 10 inches, he adds +1 to cast. If you have 20 within, he adds +2 to cast. And that's going to be crucial. Now, I'm not sure if you can stack this guy with the maybe some of the other abilities from like, it depends what you're allowed. If you're only allowed destruction models in your army, you won't be able to stack them. But there's other things that add +1 to cast, maybe. I could be mistaken. I didn't quite look that one up. But so he can basically cast 1 spell in each of your hero phases. And he has all the standard ones. Now, one of the big ones that he has Green Puke, which is a casting value of 8, which could go down to a 6 if you have 20 models around him. So you put him behind a nice big unit. It's pretty good. You draw a straight line, 2d6 long, and all the units covered suffer d3 mortal wounds. Initially, I went, that's like a 40k power. It kind of sucks, right? 2d6 range. But one of the big problems that I've had is people bubble wrap their characters in Age of Sigmar, and you can't touch them. Yep. And it's like, I can't get within range of them. I can't touch them. Part of me is like, I could assassinate. This is just D3 mortal wounds. I take 2 of these guys. I roll that 6 or better. I get this off, and I kind of suicide them up. I might be able to do 2d3 wounds to like one of your characters or 2 of your characters and kill them. The other one, which is really good, but it's a 10+ to cast. It's Foot of Gork. You're not going to cast on a 10. You need 20 guys nearby for the 8, and you're still unlikely to cast it.
Yep.
You might, though. It's basically d6 mortal wounds, and on a 4+ you do it again. On a 4+ you do it again. On a 4+ you do it again.
Yeah,
so it's the old
Foot of Gork all over again.
Yeah, but it's only d6 wounds. It's a 50-50, and it's a 10+ to cast, which on 2d6 is ridiculous, right? So you need 20 guys within range. So if I'm looking at this guy and you can tell that your opponent set up like a big 20-man unit nearby him within 10 inches, I'm going to put my archers in, knock 2 of those guys out. And, you have to make sure, because this guy only moves 4 inches, and just make sure that nobody can get within range of him. So that way he's only +1 to cast, and then he's rolling a 9, which is very unlikely. So that's my thoughts on the Shaman. Sorry to steal your thunder. So I guess I'll hand you the Mega Boss, because you've basically already talked about the other one.
Right. We already talked about the Mega Boss, didn't we?
Yeah, you talked about the mounted one. There's one on foot. He's basically the exact same.
The Orc Mega Boss. All right. So we got the Orc Mega Boss. 7 wounds, 4-inch move, 3 plus save for a guy on foot. That's pretty solid. 8 bravery. Boss Chop at 1-inch range, 6 attacks, 3 plus, 3 plus, -1 Ren, 2 damage. And then he's got the Rip Tooth Fist in his other hand. 1-inch range, 2 attacks, hits on a 5 plus, 3 plus to wound, -2 Ren with D3 wounds. That 5 to hit is no good. Abilities. Go on, lads, get stuck in. An Orc Megaboss can make a well-placed kick or thump to inspire the boys under their command to fight that a little bit harder. You can re-roll to hit rolls of 1 for friendly units of brutes that are within 5 inches when they make their attacks in the combat phase. Okay, so again,
Pretty good. That's actually really good.
with some other stuff. Strength from victory, same thing, +1 wound and attack for heroes. And then his Wah is the same thing with heroes. So I think this guy is a good example of why comp and points are important, right? Like, why would I ever take this guy over the one on the...
Yeah, you wouldn't, obviously, because it's basically the same. The Maw Crusher gives him the extra 5 inches on his bubble, and then the other special character gives him an extra 10 inches on his bubble compared to this guy. So without points, you're right. Why would you ever take him? You wouldn't.
Badass model. Really cool.
Yeah, he looks like a mega armored knob. So
yeah, when this guy came out, I thought it was a 40k model.
Yeah, a lot of people online are being like, "Hey, I build this guy. I now have another war boss. I could use them both." And I'm seeing a lot of people talking about doing double 40k in fantasy. Like, some things won't overlap, like, Killicans and trucks, but Pain Boys will definitely overlap into Age of Sigmar.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
So we'll quickly sum up the last couple ones. They brought out a new infantry unit, the Brutes. These guys have an array of weapons. They're all very good. Most are 1-inch, well, some are 2 inches. They got the standard, I call it the Stormcast Paladin template. 3 wounds, 4 plus save, movement 4. Their attacks range from, they have like 8 different weapons you can take them. Most of them take 2.
One important note for this, though. This is something you don't see very often. So a unit of Orc Brutes that has 5 or more models. Some units of Orc Brutes are armed with 2 Brute Choppas, others prefer double-handed Jagged Gore Hackers. In either case, 1 in every 5 models can be armed with a massive Gore Choppa. So there are restrictions on the number of items you can take. It's not just spread it out.
Which is just like the Paladins in Age of Sigmar, except it's 2 in every 5 get the mace.
That's good to see.
But it's cool because I think the newer War Scrolls from the initial batch that came out, that is more common, you're right, and it's pretty good. The one thing that's really cool about this unit is the leader can have like this claw, whereas if he rolls to hit with the claw and he can like grab you, and then all of his other attacks hit you automatically, which is pretty cool. The only issue is it looks super 40k to me, so I'm like, eh.
That's the power claw, right? Oh yeah, that's super power claw. Look at that stream. Yeah, there we go.
And they can reroll the hit if your wounds characteristics 4 or more. So these guys are really good at taking out some big stuff.
Yeah, these will take down monstrous infantry like no problem.
They're definitely the Paladins of the Orc. I like them. They're really solid. They do a lot of damage. 4 plus save isn't bad because it takes 2 wizards to buff it to a 2 plus, which makes me happy.
And the 4 plus save, 3 wounds, they're solid. They're solid.
Oh yeah, they're good. 3 wounds is always nice. It makes a huge difference. The Ard Boys are being re-released. The scroll's not really that new, so we won't go over that much. But they have been given to the Iron Jaws now, so they're basically now a part of that clan, which is all the heavily armored, the biggest, the most powerful orcs. So I thought that was cool, and they re-released the box with 15 models for $65 Canadian, which isn't bad for 15 big orc models.
They're big guys.
Yeah, and I happen to have like 50 of the old ones. That's why I'm so pumped about this. And the big thing about these guys is if you give them the drummer, which you always do, they add 2 to the charge roll. So if you combine that, as I said earlier, with some of the other stuff, where you can be like, hey, these guys charge 3d6, they add 2 to the charge roll, and they get an extra bonus attack, and then because of this guy, they get +1 to hit, you can make like a Death Star of these Ard Boys to go in. And they have the same stats as a Stormcast Eternal model, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Next one is the Gore Gruntas, the $34 each Canadian models.
Oh.
I think it's like $95 for 3.
That's rough. That's like Vargard territory, right? They're about the same size, I guess, but still.
Yeah, and they're standard 5 wounds, 9-inch move, 4 plus save. They have 3 attacks within 1 inch if they have a Choppa. If they have the Haka, that's 2 inches, 3 attacks. and then they have the beast does basically 4 attacks within 1 inch. Now, if they successfully charge greater than I do believe it's 8 inches, they do D3 rather than 1 for their bonus attacks. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And
But
price though, that's the one thing that's still going to be a stumbling block for getting this game widely accepted is some of the pricing. Is it?
and they're going to come down to their points cost because they're not like I read this and I go, that's not very good. I would rather take the brutes or even the ard boys over them, depending on point cost, of course, right?
Yeah.
Because like even with the Mornfang, they don't. I don't like Mornfang that much in Age of Sigmar. I'd rather just the way the mechanics are, the bigger. I guess you could say like that. To me, the heavier infantry is better in larger numbers than let's say taking the like these small cavalry units because their save is the same. It's a few more wounds, but it's less models, which means you have less board control, less objective
Exactly,
control.
exactly. You get, and with being able to suck units into combat with 3 inches, having that board control on a big beefy unit is really important, I think. Because if you look at it, like even if you comp by wounds or something, right, you can have double the amount of your paladins or just your normal stormcast guys, whatever they're called, compared to your guys on horses or
Yeah,
Mornfang. Like Iron Guts to Mornfang, let's go with that, right? You can have almost double the number of guys, which with the coherency, with the base sizes, is almost 3 times the actual footprint, which is
yeah.
really important.
Well, wound comping doesn't work
It
just
doesn't
because
work,
there's
yeah, we
there's
know
no
that.
penalty for taking elite infantry. That's the downside. But it's interesting. I don't even the Stormcast, the Dracoth riders. Somebody might. I don't like them in the game. I'd rather take my paladins, and there's a reason you see more paladins at events, I guess. But I guess if they points cost them appropriately, but it's not like Eighth Edition where these monsters cav units are getting all these bonuses. They're identical. They're just less models, and
Yeah.
it doesn't do much for me. And like even their special rules they have less special rules than all the other infantry in that mini codex, I guess you could say, the Iron Jaws. So, I guess that's it for news. Do you have anything left to add?
That's pretty much it on that front. Let's dive into the meaty stuff, the FAQ.
Yeah, like, well, I want to go to event spotlight. We'll follow the
Okay,
format.
okay,
Let's
okay.
follow the
Let's talk about
format.
playing the game we're talking about.
But we went to, yeah, we tried to go fast because I know some people could just read it online, but some people like to hear it because they won't bother reading it online and they kind of want our opinions. So that's that. So the next one's the event spotlight. CCBB Compact's not up yet for Age of Sigmar. Will be because people have been asking me for it. We're going South Coast GT Comp. The reason is it's confirmed now because, quite frankly, that's probably what the GW comp's going to be. So I'm kind of trying to jump into getting used to that. Now, if it comes out June 11th and so we're going to release a compact right after CanHammer Team Tournament because I'm just really busy this week, but it's going to come out. And if the comp from GW is very similar to South Coast or similar enough that it's usable, we might transition over to that. But I want people to have at least the extra month to get their armies configured and ready to go. So stay tuned for that. It's coming out real soon. But if you want to, go to capitalcbloodbath.com. It's an AOS GT and an AOS doubles tournament, and we're really looking for players. And now's the time to get in, man, because if you don't support the events now, they might not be around in a few years when you want to get back into it. So,
That's not us begging for money. It's simply like if there's no interest, there's no reason to run it.
oh yeah, War Machine and 40K pay for the event, like and more some. It's just that the Age of Sigmar is something that we personally believe in and would like it to thrive, right? So.
Especially with how things are going.
And
Yeah.
that's the end of August. The 19th was it 19th, 20th, 21st. I didn't write the
Yep,
date in
19th
there.
to 21st.
In Ottawa, beautiful Ottawa, Ontario, our nation's capital. So check that out. Cool. So now,
Oh, other events. We've got Power Fist and Psychers 4 coming up on May 28th. There is one spot available for that if anybody's interested. 40K RTT up here in Ottawa. We're doing 24 players, I think. Anyway, one spot, $20, 4 round RTT in Gatineau, Quebec, which is half an hour away from here. And also, there's the Northern Defenders Open in Montreal on May 8th. That's weekend after this coming weekend. Check it out. It's a lot of fun last year. They've got lots of space. The last day to sign up is May 3rd, though. So get your tickets soon if you're interested. They are 6 people away from becoming a GT level tournament for ITC right now.
yeah.
And it's a 5 round, 2 day GT.
Cool. So with that, we're just going to take a quick 3-minute break, and we'll be right back to talk about the new FAQs for Age of
Oh
Sigmar.
yeah.
Okay, so we're back to talk about the FAQ. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but we were going to highlight some points. We have a lot of questions after that. So if you guys are typing in your questions, we'll try to hit them all. I noticed a few of you in the live chat put them in, and a lot of people tweeted and emailed questions in before the show. So we'll try to cover those after we go through the FAQ briefly, and we'll see where it goes. Some of the questions got filtered for super lame negativity, so just keep that in mind if you don't hear it. So where do you want to start, Logan? Which section? So it came out on the Facebook page. It was 16 individual pictures of pages of facts, right?
Yep.
Some were one question, some were up to 10 or 12. So which page would you like to start with?
So I got these in alphabetical order here. So let's start with abilities.
Okay, that's the one I got first. But
Perfect.
so anything in abilities, the new FAQ that sticks out to you that changes the game. Like a lot of these FAQ things were very straightforward, and we're like, of course. Like several abilities trigger when you roll a 6 or more. Will a positive or negative modifier from a spell affect this? Yes, a 6 with a -1 is a 5. Like that's not even worth mentioning. It's like, yeah, we're advanced gamers. That has its place though. If you're newer in the
Yeah.
game,
No, it's a good question.
that's a legit one. But we're gonna kind of gear towards people that probably played 8th edition
Yeah.
or 40 play 40k.
So the stuff that jumped out at me for this page, just very specifically, is confirmation that spells do stack. So getting Mystic Armor, 0+ save, whatever, or 1+, what have you.
Or
Does
-8 save, bro.
-8
-8
save,
can't
all
hurt me.
this stuff, it stacks together. The other one is being able to effectively double save, right? So Two rules of my model allow me to ignore wounds or mortal wounds when it suffers them. Do I roll twice to avoid them, as two rules allow it, or only once because they do the same thing at the same time? You roll twice, once for each ability, which is pretty good.
Yeah, so anything that stacks, you just, oh, well, if I get 1500 6 plus saves, I just roll 1600 dice.
Yep.
I know that was stupid that I did, but
And the other confirmation, and this is just a general rules thing, which Chris alluded to before, is if you've got something that's stacking you past a six. So let's say you've got a six with a +3 modifier or something, so a nine, and you roll a six. It isn't like 40k or how fantasy was, where you roll a six followed by a four up kind of thing. It's actually a nine. So if
I
you
like that.
rolled if you needed like a 4+ save and you rolled a one, you're passing because you rolled a four with a +3 modifier. So,
Yeah, I like that a lot. And there's no auto ones fail, which is cool. One of the big ones that I thought was this was an area in 8th edition that was always wonky to me is a model within X inches of itself affected by spells that cast on it. And it was yes, as long as they meet the other qualifiers for the spell. So if I have an ability that says all friendly units within 18 inches get this, get like a +1 to hit, well, my model that's casting that ability, that command ability, is also affected on it because technically he's within 18 inches of himself. As long as he meets all the other criteria of the spell, like he has the right keywords or the right whatever. But I thought that was really awesome because it's like, some of them it's like, well, if you're within 18 of my guy, but my guy, is he within 18 of himself? Like it seems, I don't know, some people might disagree with me, but it seems kind of awkward, right?
well, yeah, exactly. Does the spell encompass the same area as the guy who cast it, kind of thing, or is it just yeah? No, it's a good question. It's good to have FAQ for sure.
Yeah, so that's about everything of keep notes under abilities. What's the next one you want to do?
I've got armies up next.
Oh, that's not alphabetical because it's the
The
armies, bud.
armies.
I'm just messing with you.
I think I have some that might be, but
So do you
so
want me to start with
armies.
this one, or you
Go
want to
for it.
start?
Lead the way.
So there's I marked off a few of these questions for this one. I think this is a big one, and Logan can add into that. So the one that I really liked is in combat in this anyway. There's a lot about unit splitting that kind of came up and was really awkward, and this actually came up with me at Adepticon. So if casualties split in a unit into two groups, is it forced to reform the next time it can possibly make a move? It says no. The unit can choose to remain stationary. However, if it does move, it must reform. If it is impossible for a unit to reform, then it is not allowed to move. That's huge to me because like there was an incident when I had my paladins spread out and I wanted my maces to fight, and like I don't care, these guys are gonna die, but I wanted to take all my casualties in the middle and leave my maces touching certain models, of course. But I ended up just for simplified sake taking them all from one side, so I would never get out of coherency, which isn't a real thing in this, but so I did that, but it was like now I could actually no, I want my base guys to live. I'm going to take all the guys in the middle, and if I happen to by fluke survive and kill you, then I can actually move them within coherency. And if I can't do it, then they're basically stuck and they can never move, and it kind of takes them out of the game. But at that point, if you're really worried about splitting a unit, generally they're going to die anyway. So, but I like that one.
Now, the one thing that wasn't super clear to me about that, and you know the rules again better than I do for this, for that, if you cannot reform, now does reform have a range restriction on it? Like if my guys are 20 inches apart, they can't possibly get back within 1 inch of each other.
Yeah,
And they
so I would
just
say they can't move in
okay,
that case.
yeah.
Yes.
That was the question I had about that.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
But then you're right. Like this does not answer. We're going to talk about the end. It's not a fix all. And oh, we forgot to mention that the FAQs. This is a draft that was GW released early. So they basically their new thing is, hey, let's release this. Oh my God, look at all these comments. Let's fix these comments. And then we'll
Exactly. They
release the
released it and specifically asked for feedback. Like what answers did we provide that aren't clear enough? So that's that's amazing.
Yeah, and then it's the next one that's big deal. Do I choose the targets for all the attacks of the unit before I roll? Yes, you do.
Yep.
So you have to split because you nominate a unit to fight. You have to divide up all their attacks, which is a big deal. That's kind of intuitive if you played like 8th edition. Um, and then the other one is, could you please clear up the intention behind allocating damage? Are we supposed to allocate it to a single model till it's dead? What some people are doing is, oh, well, in the shooting phase, you did 2 wounds, so that guy takes 2 wounds. And then in the combat phase, well, it's a different phase, so I'm going to allocate to a different model. And they basically answered that and said, no, our intention is that you should only have one wounded model in a unit at any given time.
Yeah.
And
So
like that.
Yeah, you've moved on to attacking, but yes, I
Oh,
agree.
sorry, I did move on. Sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
No, no, I agree wholeheartedly though. That's a big one.
Where does this? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my font's not Okay, so sorry. Let's go back to the armies
Well, no,
then.
that was everything on it. It was really just that one question was the stuff that jumped out. The rest is, how big is a game supposed to be? Can I have multiple of the same character? And the answer was agree. Opponent.
Okay, so we moved on to the attacking one, and
Yeah,
I
we
just
moved
gave you
on to
on that.
attacking. So
So you could do attacking the rest of it. I stole something.
what else do we have here? Do I have to choose targets before I roll to hit? Yes. Weapon as attacks character is more than one. Can I split the attacks? Yes. Same as you could.
That's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Talked about allocating damage. Weapon range. So this is a big one. This is something that Comp will address. I'm interested to see how they handle this in the tournament pack. But basically, if you've got a unit of 20 models and only 5 are within that 1-inch range, only those 5 can attack.
Which we all knew. That to
Yeah,
me that
it
was
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, that's how we played it. That's how I've been playing it. And I never even knew that was a contentious issue.
Now this is the huge one. Is it possible for modifiers to make a hit, wound, or save roll automatically successful? For example, a save roll of 3 with a +2 modifier. The answer is yes.
Yeah, I kind of like. Actually, I kind of like that. I know
Ugh.
it's game breaking and it's kind of stupid, but I kind of like that. It's like, yeah, man, you took 4 wizards, you buffed your unit 4 times. They can't be hurt.
I'm sticking with the ones fail. That's my dig. But yeah, so all those people that have that Archaon, joy, he's actually unkillable now.
Well, he could be.
He
Just
could
kill his
he could
wizards.
be. He could be. And the other really big one here, this was major contention across every comp pack. Everyone was asking this question.
This is the one I think it is. I'm gonna freak out.
With war machines and crew, how should you allocate wounds? The war machine and the crew are 2 separate units. You
That's
have to
not what
target
it
them separately.
says. Oh, that's not what it says. Raw. I hate that ruling, but I'm okay with it because it's ruled now. But I hate that.
Yeah.
Oh, I was
So
always like, no, they're one unit. You pick the one. Oh, but that's so disappointing.
now one I think is on here, but it may be later because I don't see it. Is how wound modifiers, so multiple wounds like D3 work. I think that's going to be in a different section here.
Yeah, we can just cover it now, and we'll skip it when we get
All
to it.
right. So the question is, if I have something that inflicts D3 wounds, right? So let's say I've got my big Mock Crusher dude. I roll my 2+ to hit. I roll my 3+ to wound. Do I roll my save against that, and then take D3 wounds if it fails, or how does it work?
That's how everybody's been playing it.
Because that's how it worked in Fantasy. That's how it works in 40k. The way it works in Age of Sigmar, apparently, is I roll my 2+ to hit, I roll my 3+ to wound, I roll my D3 to see how many saves you have.
Yeah.
So, it's, in theory, it works out to about the same thing, but that's
doesn't,
a
though.
big, big difference for how saves happen.
It doesn't, because even if you do 3 damage to your attack, the guy's making 3 saves instead of 1 save, and if he fails it, taking 3
Yeah,
damages.
exactly.
So it kind of averages out the odds. The issue that I have with that ruling is that it now made one of the most contentious and game-breaking items, which is that everything gives +1 saves, your Mystic Shield. It now made Mystic Shield better.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was like, well, if I get through... But now it's like, well, it's more important to buff my armor save now. And it's also, because of that, it also makes mortal wounds even better, because now everybody has a better armor save, so you need more mortal wounds to get rid of the armor saves, and it's kind of like a vicious cycle. But as long as a lot of armies have access to mortal wounds, it should be okay.
Yeah, which not everything does. But anyway,
Well, none of the older stuff, a lot of the newer stuff does, like a lot of the
Yeah.
destruction.
so we'll see what death gets. All right. So
The one thing I wanted to point out, sorry, and this was known before out of the rulebook, but a lot of people play this wrong.
Yep.
Saves of a dash get no +1 for being in cover. So if you have a dash save on your profile, you can never actually modify your save to be +1. Because you can't modify a dash, it's not a 0. So if you have a 0 for a save, which nobody does, then you can modify it. But if you have a dash, you're stuck with no save forever. You can never buff it.
Okay, interesting. All
So
right.
just with a save of a dash, get a save for being in cover. No, see save of dash and hints and tips section of that.
Yeah, I was looking at the wrong section there. Yep. All right. Cool.
So what's the next one?
Yeah, that question was on there. I see it now. All right. Next up, we've got Battle Shock. There's nothing to talk about with this one. Battle Shock's pretty self-explanatory. The FAQ thing is specific to a Skaven rule, and the answer is follow the rule.
Yeah, that was pretty. Some of them are very like, You're reading too much into it. Okay, so is it next one's Battle Begins then?
Next one, oh, Battle Begins. Let me find this. Yes, that would be the next one.
Well,
Yes,
keep
okay, I
going.
have
That's
it as
good.
the Battle Begins. There's the
Yeah,
problem.
that's what I have it as too.
All right, so this clarifies a couple things, and some of these are from other parts in the FAQ, but we'll talk about it here because it's all relevant. Actually, it is included here, which is perfect. So to lead this one off, we've got what is setup. It basically clarifies setup is typically when a unit is placed on the table during deployment, but can also refer to a unit being deployed in a location other than the battlefield. So, for example, put into play once the game has started, Stormcast, Eternal, Lightning Strike, Chameleon, Skinks, Chameleon, so on and so forth. So basically, it's pregame.
Yeah.
However you want to handle. How you deploy units in a battalion, for example, the Wood Elf Wanderer host, it can be set up as one deployment or individually. Your pick. After you set up, just tell your opponent what's in, how you're doing.
I think a tournament would need to specify that. I
It would
don't
need
think
to choose
having
one.
it open like that. I feel like that one's like they covered their that's like the proper way to rule it from the company maybe,
That's the AOS rule, for it,
but
right? Like,
I
it's
I
agree
think
with your
that one
opponent.
needs to be ruled differently. That you either set up one or the other. But mind you, options are options that are great, and not all those battalions are that great. So
Next up, most of these are actually really useful. Do casualties your opponents inflict on summoned units count against your casualty total? The answer is yes, and I'm pretty sure that's actually in the core rules.
yeah, we always played it that way anyway.
If a unit dies and come back to life, still counted as casualties? No, they are not.
But very few things
Very few things
come
do.
back to
Yeah,
life.
very few do.
So don't
But
mistaken that with this unit of horrors died, and I'm summoning a
yeah, that's
horror.
two different units.
That's two different units. Yeah.
All right. If a battle plan says do not use the victory conditions in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar rules sheet, does this invalidate sudden death? Yes.
The one of the big parts about that that's really good is that like when do you choose a sudden death objective? So when do you say like screw it, you outnumbered me, I'm going sudden death? It's at the
Yeah.
start of the game. It's not like people were saying where, well, when I drop below this model count, I can call a sudden death. No, it's beginning of the game.
This.
So your
Yeah.
opponent has to know going into the game that you called a sudden death, so he stops putting models on, let's say, or he does different things,
And
right?
it specifically says sudden death objectives are determined for the first battle round, not during. Which is good because the wording for it previously just said after you know
Yeah,
no
yeah.
end to it. So it was very open ended. Here's another big one. Can models set up someplace other than the battlefield, in Celestial Realms, so reserve, something like that, use abilities or command abilities? No. Only models deployed on the battlefield can use those abilities.
I thought that was self-explanatory, but I'm glad it's in there. This actually page was one of the better part. This was like this is essential. This stuff, most of the stuff should actually be added to the main rulebook. I
Oh,
would
I
say
agree.
because
Yeah.
a lot of it's just very like they could add an extra comma like these are only usable on on the table or something like it. But it was worth it. So the next one I guess would be Battlefield, right?
Yeah. So this one is dead simple. How is terrain supposed to be used? And the answer is read the rule sheet for it. Otherwise, just use generic terrain rules.
Yeah. And
Um,
the big one, this is huge
the,
because
ah,
we're all. I like this ruling. I actually really like this
I
ruling.
don't understand why this has to be an FAQ. This has always been the same thing.
Oh,
Every
some
version
people
of
when you
this
play even
game.
40K, they get you get a cover, but do hills do you get benefit from cover being on a hill? No, hills are not scenery. They're part of the battlefield. So
Uh,
even if you have an ability that affects scenery, hills are not scenery. Period.
yeah, I don't.
I like you know what I know that
It
you
makes
that's
sense in this context because there are rules specific for scenery.
yeah.
But granted, cover. I mean, come on. Like Age of Sigmar is its own game, but hills have never provided cover except for like actual line of sight percentage. I don't think they've ever in any version of any GW game covered for B. That doesn't
Yeah,
make
but
sense.
the issue with Age of Sigmar in that was that if your unit is completely within a
A
piece
piece
of
of terrain. Yeah.
terrain, you get a +1 to your saves. You're like, well, the hill is it? No, it's not a piece of terrain. That's what I interpret that. Is a hill a piece of terrain? No, it is not, which is fantastic.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, so we already did Battle Shock.
So we're on to chaos, I think.
Sure, yeah, mine's not alphabetical order, so
What do you have next?
I have Death next.
Okay, well let's do chaos. We'll just go
Yeah.
through it. You've got easier access to these, I think.
Oh, I have
So
Chaos next. Never mind, I'm retarded. I have Chaos.
this one is contentious in my mind because this is something that I think has to be different. Otherwise, this model's almost unusable. Archaon has 2 attacks with 1 inch range, but the base he comes with has more than an inch of empty space between the edge of the base and the dragon's tails. Measuring model to model, it should be impossible for him to actually hit anything. Are we supposed to measure from the base edge, or is he only capable of smacking things that are as huge as he is? The answer to this is a little contentious in my mind.
Well, it's not contingent. The answer to
Well,
this is exactly what they meant in the rules.
uh,
We just don't like it.
yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. So the answer is the base is ignored, models can be placed upon it when they move and moves, which is clear in the rules, which we don't agree with. That's its own thing. That's a preference. The problem is, if I remember correctly, the rules say to measure from the weapon. And Archaon with a 1 inch range on his weapons can hit almost nothing in the.
Yeah, they didn't answer that. They didn't take into account
Yeah,
height.
yeah,
That was the
exactly.
issue.
Because Archaon's almost 8 inches off the ground. So if
Yeah.
I've surrounded with clan rats, he could never attack.
So that's this aspect of the game. So they said that you can like we could debate this all night. You could put models on bases. Everybody said screw that. That looks like crap. It doesn't fit right. What's the point of
Oh, it's
bases
your
then?
bases.
Some people say it ruins your bases. I was like, prove that. I don't know. But anyway, I disagree with this ruling 100%. I think in competitive play, you have to measure to the base. And as Logan said, right, like height, there's no rules for height, there's no rules for anything. So, yeah, it's just one of those things we're going to have to ignore this. I honestly think that this is just like, this is the way they ruled it was they're being dead right. So that's
Yeah.
like
Oh
when
yeah.
you
It's
know,
it's accurate for their version of it.
yeah.
I don't think that's gonna last in the competitive pack. I don't think it can. Like
I read that and
if
went,
yeah, if they put in their tournament pack that you can still stack stuff on top of bases, every single tournament's just gonna like
now some
there's no
people
sense
do
in
it
having
though.
it.
Some people do it and say there's no issues. You just don't worry about it.
I don't know. Like I don't know how you seal your bases or if you do, but the flock on mine, like even under a layer of paint with glue, everything, it still chips off. Like if I rub my
Super
thumb
glue.
across it, it all falls off.
I use super glue and it doesn't come off ever.
Nah, I just use white glue for it. But either way, like it's if I put the GW tufts on it or whatever, or let's say I do a nice scenic base with some cork, it's so easy to tear that stuff off, even if it's super glued. I don't want to deal with it. I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't like people touching my models. Like I don't mind if you do, but like if you ask first, kind of thing. But don't just
That's
come
all
over.
personal preference, and there's no right or wrong answers when you talk about personal preference in painting. But like my Nurglings just broke the game because now nobody can hit them because I'll just be an inch away from your weapon,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But yeah, that rule's garbage. So we're just gonna move on because that rule actually was like, it should have said decide with your opponent before the game if you want to measure base to weapon. Some people say it works measuring model to model. I don't know. I don't know. I don't agree. So
All right. Next big one. Does this Chaos Hell Cannon Legacy? We'll see if that lasts in the comp. Do D6 mortal wounds per hit or D6 total? Each attack does D6, which is
yeah,
pretty
I don't
cool.
understand where this question came from.
Doomfire, if you look at the profile, is a little ambiguous. 'Cause it just says he makes 2 Doomfire attacks, but the Doomfire profile is a little iffy because it just states like range for wounds it does.
Oh, because I always played it that way where it's
So
two.
yeah, like it's relatively intuitive, but I can see why the question came.
Yeah.
So
So
I
I
go on with this.
Yeah, I have one. A lot of them are very self-explanatory, but this one I think is a big deal, and it comes up again. But the Herald of Slaanesh on a Secret Chariot has 1 fewer wounds than the regular Secret Chariot, which just seems weird, especially considering the Herald of Slaanesh on Exalted Seer Chariot has the same number of wounds as the regular Exalted Seer, Secret Chariot. Is this intended? So I know you probably didn't follow that because I went really fast, but it basically says, no, this has been corrected in Grand Alliance Chaos, the Warhammer Age of Sigmar app. And there's another question where they do the same thing. They say and online. So basically, what they're saying is any errors we find, because GW in the past would never correct a printed sheet.
Yep.
We're basically saying no. We're actually the app is going to be corrected, and the online PDFs are going to be corrected, even though the printed book has it a different way. So what that tells me is if you're going to be a competitive tournament player, you have to use the app or online resource
Yeah.
right before the event.
Which is perfect too. It's free, right?
Yeah, it's all free.
Put it on
And
your
some-
phone. You get the app. You do whatever. The rules are available, which is perfect.
And some people get really pissed. They're like, "Well, why would I buy the book?" Well, honestly, so you buy the book. It's beautiful. You read it. They're more for collectors anyway.
They are.
They have the rules in it, but yes, if there's an update, would you rather have a wrong book that's wrong forever, or would you have a wrong book with an updated War Scroll you can download online and slide it in there, or you
Yeah.
know, and like honestly, if you're new to Age of Sigmar, I highly recommend guys print off the War Scrolls for all your units and put them on the table behind them, and let your opponent grab them and read them. It speeds your game up. Instead of them asking you, just well,
Ton.
they're behind all my units. Just reach out, grab them at your leisure, and read what my guys do. And
And it's way faster than using the app. Like the app is great if you know what you're doing, but if you have to jump back and forth between units all the time, especially if you're using like the newer style war scrolls they have on the app are really good because they're all one page.
yeah,
But if you're using the older ones, like the Hell Cannon was spread across like 4 pages, you had to go
yeah.
through, and it took a while to load. Like the app is slow. I like maybe it's just my tablet, but it's not quick.
No, it is slow, and you need internet if you like. So if I like this happened at Adepticon, right? The one hall I didn't get internet where I was playing very well, and I'm in there and I'm like, oh, I can't down because like what I would like to do is it was a double. So while Butcher was doing his stuff, I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna read with that. Like most of their stuff I knew, but there was like, well, that's one guy I have no clue what that weird thing does, and I'd go in and I'd read it, right? So the app's super handy for that.
It's good. It's good. I mean, you can just tell it to download everything as soon as it comes out. I think it's manual to do it, but the opportunity exists.
Yeah, and I disagree with everybody online that would rather have it wrong but match their book. I'm sorry. It has to be right. I'd rather have it right in the app in the wrong book.
The rules for this game came out before any of the printed media. Like all of the PDFs for everything. Like the precedent for this has been set. The free rules came out before the printed rules, and the free rules are being updated. Like I
Yeah.
understand wanting to have your book, but it's the same as always, right? Like if you show up to a tournament, let's say you're doing 40K, right? You show up with your Chaos Space Marines Codex. You look at your Helldrake, like, oh yeah, he's got 360 degrees on his Baleflame. Well, no, he doesn't. The FAQ says he doesn't. Like you have to go with the FAQ. Right?
Yeah, and that's normal for all games. And
Yeah.
you know what? A lot of people I think are going to start buying the books in the app, and you get a discount, man. Like, so if they come up with a big book with like 5 different formations, you can buy each individual formation like $1 each for just the ones you want, or you can concentrate on your faction. You could buy them all. It's not that expensive. And I think for competitive games, you need an app that updates, period, because there's going to be mistakes. Like I write books for a living, technical manuals, and I have an editor, and my stuff gets translated to French, and then they edit that, and we've never released a perfect book, and
Oh
it
yeah, it's
goes through two to
impossible.
three people. It's
It's impossible.
impossible.
You have to do multiple revisions. The more eyes on it, the better. Like I do a lot of documentation work for my job as well, and yeah, it's the same thing. Like when we're doing docs, at least recently, we'll get like 6 people in a room and edit this stuff in real time. Get technical people, technical writers, and our documentation team in there, and yeah, so it's good. No, no more eyes is always better.
Yeah, and
Um,
like the community is gonna find things and break them, and that's why we talked about it earlier about the points, right? We want this stuff to be fixed. Like we don't want the Eldar book like it is in 40K right now to stay broken for 3 years. We want it fixed now. We want the points cost of the stuff raised so that we don't turn off the newbies, right? So
so
we're gonna move on to.
we
Oh,
got
sorry.
one more on this, which was sort of a non-question with a non-answer, but I think is rather funny to bring up. Kairos Fateweaver's War Scroll says you can change the result of any dice
Oh
roll to
yeah.
whatever you want. Say if you roll 35 dice, could you change it to 36s? So it's just sort of the wrong question, and it's a result of GW never using the singular die. They always say a single dice, which I think is technically correct, but anyway, you may alter the result of a single one dice roll to any result of your choosing. So the problem is they still haven't clarified what the valid
Yeah,
results
they
are
should have said you could change it from a
from
one
a
to a
1 to a
six.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a D6.
So
So
that missed the mark a little bit, that one
yeah,
for
just
sure.
just a little bit.
So I
So
guess we'll go on to death then.
yeah, let's. No, next up we've got charge.
Well, we can do death now
All right,
because I have a death
we'll
and
do
it's one
death.
question.
Do it.
If righteous smiting is cast twice on the same unit, does the effect stack? So the unit would does stack in any way, i.e., would the unit generate an additional 2 or more attacks every time a 6 or more is rolled to hit? And the answer is no. So something that says that if you hit on a 6, you generate an extra attack. If you cast it twice, you don't generate 2 6s. It's still one rule that applies to that unit once.
Yeah, I guess so, and that's specific wording, right? Like Mystic Shield says you get +1 to your armor save,
Yeah, which is different than
which
just
is
saying
different,
like
exactly, because this says if you roll a 6, this happens. So if
Yeah.
you cast this twice, if you roll a 6, this still happens. So I get
So I
that.
guess we can go into charge phase.
All right, charge phase. This is a big one. This is a big question. I got a bunch when we were starting out with this, and I did a video on this, which a lot of people thought I was wrong about, but turns out I wasn't.
That's
Uh,
good. At least you're right for something. Oh!
yeah. So when rolling for a charge move, should you declare who you intend to charge first? The answer is no. If you have a unit within 12 inches of any enemy units, you can declare a charge for that. You then roll for the distance that unit may charge and see what enemy units, if any, are in range. Note that you don't have to make the charge even if a unit is in range unless the charger has an ability that specifically says otherwise. So you can just throw out those charge rolls, see what you get, and make your own decisions as you go.
That's how we play Adepticon, and it sounds like it's taking some skill out of the game, but it's really not that bad.
Uh,
I like it.
yeah, if you combine it with everything else, especially the double turns, it keeps a pretty significant amount of risk in it, as opposed to zero risk, high reward. So it's got trade offs. You have to look at it in the bigger perspective, especially with the double.
Yeah, and it's just easier. Like this happened to me in a 40K event. Is I said I'm going to charge those 2 units, and I rolled it, and the guy said, "Well, I'm just going to assume that you pick the further one away to charge, so you fail." The guy did that to me at Adepticon, man. So I'm just saying, like it's you didn't declare. You said you're charging those two, so I'm assuming that one's your primary. And I said, "Well, okay, screw you. I failed the charge."
That's I mean, yeah,
That
there's fault on both
he's not
sides of
wrong.
the
He's
table.
not wrong. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong either. It's just that's why I don't mind the roll and just figure it out because sometimes in the heat of the moment you roll the dice, right? So I guess we're on to combat.
Combat, go for it.
This is the biggest one. I have about one, two, three, four selected in this, which is over half of it. How is pile in moves measured? This was a weird one, right? Because like it says you just pile in towards an enemy model, and it's like, well, I like what does towards mean really, right? Like I can walk towards Logan's house, but still be kind of walking sideways with a slight angle towards Ottawa. So the pile and move is measured in the same way as a normal movement. No part of, well, this isn't the one that I.
Yeah.
This is the. So
They
sorry,
all
I
build
jumped ahead
together.
a little
They
bit.
all build together.
Yeah, they all build together. The pile and movement is measured in the same way as a normal movement. No part of the model may move further than the pile in distance. In addition, when a model piles in, it must finish its pile and move closer to the nearest enemy model, which is also wonky because the nearest enemy model could be one unit that you're not necessarily engaged with that unit. It didn't say nearest engaged model, which is that's pretty straightforward and cool. Can a model that's piling in move around friendly units in order to reach the closest enemy model? Yes, as long as you finish the pile and move closer. That's a self-explanatory one.
Where that becomes tricky though is for compacts where you can't overlap bases. So if I've got two circular bases and there's another dude up here, he would technically never be able to move. So you'd have to move.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird, but I kind of get that. Can a model pile in? I move 3 inches in an ongoing combat from a previous round to allow more models to get into melee range as they pile in. So that's basically saying if you're already engaged, can you pile in to move closer to allow more models to fight? Yes, you can, which I thought was intuitive as well.
Well, where,
And
where this one comes into is one of the ones you're about to talk about as well. One of the other ones here is basically if you're within base contact, can you still pile in? Or can you make another pile in move? And these two I think contradict each other in the
it
answers.
does. This was like really messed me up. I was like, this is not right. So keep going. Sorry.
So the question there was can a model pile in, move 3 inches, blah blah blah, in an ongoing combat to allow more models in? And the answer is yes, as long as each model that moves finishes closer to the nearest enemy. Okay, fine, that's great. The next question is if you are already in contact with a model, do you still get to pile in and rotate around the enemy units? And the answer is no, you can't. You must finish the pile in closer to the nearest enemy model, otherwise you cannot pile in. So if you're in base contact already,
You
which
can't move.
yeah, you can't move. You're pinned there, so it can actually be very very possible for you to block your own units from ever getting.
And I do disagree with that. I think with the nature of the way the system is set up, you should be able to slide around and add more in because your goal, in my opinion, should always be to get maximum models in. It doesn't really say that in the rules, but
It's in
that
general, yeah.
generally makes the game more interesting and fun and more streamlined. So I think that was an issue. And then, do you need line of sight to pile in? No, you do not. You can pile in if you can't see them as long as an enemy's within 3 inches. So if I'm behind a wall and you move to the other side of the wall, I can pile into you. I
Yep.
don't need to see you. It's not like 40k. I don't need to see you.
Which is also has an interesting side effect of if I have a wall that's a foot tall and my model's right here, I can actually attack through the wall if you're within.
Yes. Which you have to think about a game
Works that
abstractly
narrative.
sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, yeah.
And that's not
Sometimes,
different in 40k. Like if you're within 2 inches of something in base contact, make your attacks.
yeah,
It's
yeah. You're sticking your sword through a hole in the wall,
exactly.
kind of like in the. I'm not gonna go there. Never mind. So next
Oh
one, I guess, would
my.
be destruction.
Yeah, let me just check the last question here. So the other one is just clarification. If you pile in and it brings you within range, that unit is sucked in.
Yeah, I don't. Everybody I know and every game I've ever played, we play that way. So
All right, destruction. Take us away.
I actually have nothing selected on destruction. I just said it's just a lot of fixing their stuff, so I didn't
It's
bother.
pretty clear.
Miscellaneous. I thought this was funny because it
Miscellaneous.
shows this. Hey,
Yep.
did you
Oh,
get
I
the
didn't. I
miscellaneous?
didn't download
Okay,
that.
so miscellaneous. I thought this was funny. It showed the tongue-in-cheek brown or red sauce on a bacon sandwich. Red, you fool. Always red. Brown sauce is for sausage sandwiches. I thought that was funny. It showed in that they are taking this. It kind of reminds you when you get about halfway through that they're not taking it as serious as you may be.
Mhm.
So think about that sometimes when you're
It's
analyzing.
good to see they haven't lost their sense of humor entirely, right? Because a lot of Age of Sigmar stuff is like I dare say it's a bit more grimdark than even fantasy was. It seems pretty serious. A lot of the goofiness is gone, right? Like the new dwarves aren't the big drunk fans.
No,
The orcs are not silly anymore. They're just badass.
they're evil. Some people said they're old. They're so silly now, and I was like,
Oh God,
are you
no!
crazy? They're
Have you
not
not
jumping
seen
on
the old
squigs.
orcs? Yeah.
Yeah, these guys
So
look violent.
yeah, it's good to see there's still some humor in there, and that is one thing I miss. Honestly, is like I appreciate this that it's more serious. I think it makes probably for a better game overall. But I like the goofy aesthetic sometimes. Anyway, yeah, it is good to see
Cool. So we can move on, I guess, to monsters.
monsters. So this is a big
Take it
one.
away.
If a monster heals wounds, does it still count as having taken those wounds for the purposes of making its attacks and abilities weaker? The answer is no. It's whatever the current number of wounds are. So if you've taken 5 wounds, you're down to 9 or something, and you healed back up to 13, you've effectively only taken.
That wasn't a question to me. And to be, if I'm being blunt, like I read that and I go, that's pointless. But maybe it needed to be
Well,
said.
it's the same kind of thing, right? Like with 40k, with like getting extra points for doing hull points to vehicles and stuff from the escalation rule through attrition victory. It's the same kind of thing. Like, if it heals, does it still count for victory points? It's a similar sort of idea. All
Cool. So the
right,
next one would be movement.
movement phase. So this is one that's not going to stick around, I think, for a lot of the tournament play. But since we measure from the model and not from the base, does pivoting count as moving? There's a huge answer to this, but the very short answer is yes. If like no part of your model can move further than your stick, and if you pivot, part of your model has moved because you overlap. It's whatever you get different reach based on how you're modeled. So yes, it does count as moving.
Yeah, that was the only one that I was really worried about. Like, because the movement phase is pretty straightforward, and that was the one that was like, well, there's no rules for pivoting. But if you say it's just measured from the base, then there's no point to ever pivot. So who really cares, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
I think if they just made it, if they wanted to cut it down to 4 rules, they could literally say measure to the base and then cut out a bunch of, and then add in a few other rules, and it would kind of streamline the game a little bit more. But so, is there anything else in movement for you?
That was the only one that really jumped out to me. There's clarification around moving through your own units. The answer is that you can move through the gaps in another unit if you can fit, but you can't move over units, which is, I think, basically the same as 40k moving through friendly units.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really change too much. It's for fantasy comparison. If you're doing Kings of War, right, you can move through another unit as long as you get inside of it.
So I guess we're gonna go on to order.
Yeah, I'll let you take this one away.
Okay, so I read through order and I was like, okay, these are all specific things. It's not a big deal. Nothing's game changing. The one that I really like though is I have a human cannon. Must I play it as an Empire cannon or can I play it as an Ironweld Arsenal cannon? And the answer is it is an Empire cannon. The other one has dwarf crews.
No
So that
proxies, you damn fool.
yeah, I'm reading between the lines of no, not you can't proxy.
Yeah.
So That's the only
which
thing that I got out of that whole page that matters for relevant listeners.
I'm honestly, well, I'm surprised and not surprised that that didn't get an answer of just agree with your opponent. I'm not surprised because this way they sell more models. But I mean,
Well,
the answer to all this stuff is always just talk.
there's
Like
also so
proxy games have their place.
so what you just said. So we're gonna move on to the rules because this is the first question: is a fact required when you can discuss things with your opponent before a game? Players should always feel free to discuss the rules before a game and change things as they see fit, and they both want to do so. Whatever the printed rules and facts may say, the rules and facts simply provide a default setting, and then they have a smiley emoticon. So
Yeah.
they basically said what Logan just said, like we would prefer you to use the dwarf cannon as a dwarf cannon and the human cannon as an empire cannon, but ultimately do whatever the hell you want if you don't agree with any of this.
Yep. Which is good. It's a good catch-all. They've had that in almost all of their books forever. So
Yeah. And then in the rules, I guess if we're moving through it, is there any kind of facing in Age of Sigmar? No. The rules allow the use of missile weapons even when attacking in close combat. Is this correct? And yeah, it is. And I've played it that way, and I don't think it's that
yeah,
big of a deal.
it's very clear. Like I understand why people don't like it. I don't like it from a forging the narrative kind of perspective, but it's not an unclear.
Yeah. That's cool. Anything else in that section you're interested in?
The other thing is just that you can attack through other units,
Yeah, which I
which
thought was
is
clear as well. But
pretty
yeah.
clear.
So War Scrolls and War Scroll battalions.
Yeah, take it away.
This is the first one. This answers Wee's question from the chat. Kind of, not really. Will War Scrolls for models that are being discontinued be maintained? Yes, you can always find them on the Games Workshop website.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really
So
good to
it's
see that they're maintaining those.
So your Tomb Kings are not dead. There's just no more models for them, and by maintain, I'm reading between the lines as they're going to update them to be less gamey. Maybe like maybe they'll take out some of the rules that are ridiculous, like you can't kneel or something in the future with this new compact. That's me wish listing,
Yeah,
honestly.
I would bet that maintain means we're gonna pay the 2 cents a month to host this forever.
Yeah, I don't know though if they're going to be making a tactical game. That legacy system that is in South Coast GT where you can't take any legacy scrolls that won't fly for a GT comp pack for Games Workshop. I don't
I
think.
agree. I agree. But what I'm saying is just that there's no benefit to them to update those rules because they can't possibly sell models based on those because they don't sell them.
Unless they break the game and make it no longer tactical and competitive. Because I'm not gonna lie, a lot of those legacy scrolls is because we asked about those goofy
Well,
rules.
right, but they can
But
balance that out
those
with points, right?
that
Like
is true
if
as
the
well.
Kalita Archer Star is 50 points, I don't know, like arbitrarily, if it's 50 points, it's amazing. If it's 7,000 points, it's crap, right?
Yeah, I
So
agree with
it
that
all comes
statement
down to
as
that.
well. Anything else in War Scrolls that you found necessary?
Always use the most recently published version, but again, agree with your opponents. Think that's really the biggest thing.
It says you can choose which one,
Yeah,
but I think that was kind of them being like, oh, but no, you should always use the most recent one. I don't put a lot of faith in that.
yeah. I think that was the biggest thing for me. Here was one. When selecting models for a War Scroll battalion, do named characters count towards the requirements? For example, in order to make a great Moon Clan, I need to take a Night Goblin War Boss. Does Skarsnik fulfill this requirement as he has the keyword? Yes. They can be taken as if they have the appropriate keyword, thus Skarsnik can be used as the Night Goblin Boss.
Yeah,
Which is
that's
pretty
good to
cool.
clarify.
Which is pretty
I,
cool.
I I thought that was true, but it's good to clarify
Yeah, and
that.
that is good because there's still, and again, I don't go through this with a fine tooth comb like I did when it came out, but the whole keyword thing is still sort of off for how like there still hasn't been any clarification for inheritance. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Pretty much everyone seems to lean towards no, which I think is probably the
I
correct
think
way
I
to do
think
it.
there is no
But
inheritance.
this is a big one because this sets an interesting precedent for how that kind of stuff works.
But that's easy to fix in the future. If they're going to be updating the app and stuff, a lot of those guys, those keywords are easy to update. And as stuff gets refreshed, I think they are updating the keywords to reflect the new uh, clans, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, like for the orcs, like the Iron Jaws, like those units, like Ard Boys are now, which are Black Orcs, are now Iron Jaws. Period. That's a new thing that wasn't around when the game first dropped. Wizards, actually, it might have been around. Maybe I didn't register it
I
because
don't
it
think
was.
Iron Jaws were.
No, I don't think that was a keyword before. I didn't check that though. Wizards is the last one that we have to cover. If I have several wizards, can I cast Mystic Shield multiple times? We covered that before. Yes, you can.
Yep.
This is ridiculous. Actually, this is the one that pissed me off the most.
Yeah, this one doesn't fly.
Can summoning spells on some War Scrolls be used by the appropriate caster even if none of the models are in the army? Yes. So if you play demons, you can cast any of those demon spells.
You
It
can
doesn't have to be in the
summon
army.
Lord of Change and 6 Hell Cannons, even if your army is nothing but pink horrors.
Yeah.
Which is something I think, actually, I know every comp system has already dealt with. So this is something that I think is one of the questions we got, but just to address it, like, this game still needs a comp system, right? Short of, well, no, everything GW has right now needs comp. And
But everything
this
is comp.
doesn't. Everything is
Even War Machine has a comp system for their hyper competitive tournaments.
they have their own
X-Wing
comp.
does,
They have
right?
their own comp system, but that's its own thing. Like this still needs some third party comp to run.
Yeah.
Which they've outlined in their rules, right? Like agree with your opponent how you want to do it. FAQs and rules are baseline, so that's fine. I really 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 appreciate that they've done this. This is great. This is what they needed because now there's a solid base to build that on top of. But yeah, this kind of stuff just doesn't fly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll get to the question later on, but basically, what parts of the FAQ are good, what parts aren't.
Yeah. So the next one is if I summon a wizard, can you use his magic abilities in the same hero phase? Yes, you can. And then the last one is can you keep summoning slain models, dice permitting, forever and ever and ever? Yes. So somebody in the chat just commented like, could I just summon a million pink horse forever? As per Raw, yes, you can.
Yeah.
As long as you keep rolling the right amount of dice and you have the models, you can fill the board with pink horrors. So yeah, as he said, we'll answer a question on that later, but that's just unfeasible. And maybe they'll fix that with their June 11th competitive pack that's coming out. But
Yeah, I think that's
to
the
me,
kind
I,
of
to
thing.
me, I read, I was actually like really happy about this until I got to this
So you get to
Wizards
that
one
page.
because they didn't address the the summoning was the elephant in the room. That was the complete elephant in the room, and it's still there. But I'm not going to get down on it. Like they did a lot of good. So I'll give it to Logan for his final thoughts on it, and then we'll move on to questions.
Yeah. Overall, I'm thrilled they released this. It fixes a lot of problems. I think the big conflict on this, and this leads into the questions, is that a lot of these do not line up with the choices the community or communities have made for how they want to play this game. And I think some rightfully so, and perhaps some wrongfully so. The summoning thing is a huge problem. That's not going to stick around. Tournament play, regardless of what GW says, no third-party tournaments are going to allow uncomp summoning because it is literally game-breaking.
Yeah, because if you do, I'll take 300 pink horse to your event.
Exactly,
Like,
and
I'm retarded that way.
you are. You own what 60 warp spiders, but that was something that people figured out day one. This game, right? And there was the same hubbub when summoning came into 40k, but everyone realized that sucked pretty quickly for like just spamming summoning. The difference is in Age of Sigmar, it doesn't suck because you can just bring in the broken stuff. Like you can, if you've got some spell familiars, right, and you've got a guy that gets a bonus like a Lord of Change or something, you're just bringing in 50 Hell Cannons in a turn, or an infinite amount of pink horrors on less than average dice.
Well, not even infinite. You bring in like one big guy or one Lord of Change. His spell alone, which is like six. It's like it on average does six mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Is like that's good enough,
And
right?
all of your wizards know that too. That's the ridiculous thing. Like if I spend one turn, I summon 20 units of pink horrors. The next turn I summon 20 Lords of Change, and you just lose. It's like regardless of the fact that nobody's going to do it, it's just logistically, or sorry, regardless of the logistics, it's theoretically just bad design. So that one, I'm going to be very happy to see everyone again. Let's put it that way.
All in all, though, considering we had nothing, and this is only a draft one, I'm assuming they're going to fix it based on our feedback
Hopefully.
and blah, blah, blah. Fantastic job. I don't want to say anything negative because we have a question where we're going to say some negative stuff, but in general, I just think it's better to have it than not have it.
Yes, absolutely. Even if we don't agree with it, I am ecstatic that this has been done.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I am ecstatic that they're doing it for 40.
There's
Because-
tons of shit that I don't agree with for ITC comp, but I
yeah,
say
but-
nothing but good about ITC,
Because
right?
it clarifies it, right? You get the solid baseline to work. And that's really all that people are asking for with this and with 40k. And that's been the biggest complaint about Age of Sigmar is, how do I build my list? How do these rules? And like you guys have heard me time and time again. So it's fantastic to see that being addressed. Uh, really happy to see it. And the other thing I am just thrilled to death about is if you look at these were all community based questions. They went up on Facebook and said, "We want to know, what do you guys want to know about this game?
Yeah.
What can we address?" Because otherwise, we get the problems like the Tau Codex and 40K, right? There's a list as long as my arm of things that need to be FAQ'd in that just don't make sense and that the community has had to deal with because the wording is wrong or it's just blatantly overpowered in some people's opinion or so on and so forth. And they haven't done anything. And it came out in like August of last year or something like that, or September. Actually, it was
That's the
August.
issue, right?
Yeah, so
Like,
it's good to see that they're doing that, and they are doing it with 40K apparently. We'll see when it comes out, but it's awesome to see that they're actually engaging with it. That's a huge change from the past 4 or 5.
yeah, so it's good. So we're gonna move on to questions. So right now, if you've asked one already, I think Logan kind of goes through the chat and keeps track of them a little bit. But we're gonna go on to the pre-sent in one. So send your questions in the chat right now, and then we'll get to those in the end. We'll try to go quickly because we got a lot this time. So the first one from Rillian, which is Brad Schwant. Which parts of the fact will you completely ignore, and which parts have merit? Logan,
Yeah, I think we've sort of flogged this dead horse a couple times now.
I just
The
want to give him credit for asking it, and
Yeah,
that's
oh, for
that's
sure.
the question we referenced on it, right?
Yeah. So the short answer for me is I will gladly, in every comp system that I will support, as well as anything I design, you're measuring from the base for everything. You're moving based on your base. You're not doing it from the model because otherwise it punishes you for doing cool designs on your models. You want the bigger base, like the taller base, whatever. I don't think it has a place in the hobby. I think it's a very awkward, clunky mechanic. And the summoning's got to go.
Yeah, I agree with those 2 points. Some people are really raging about the unkillable save or the auto hitting. I like it, but I'm a freak, so
I don't like it, but I don't know enough about the game to say whether or not it's broken or not broken.
well, it's definitely broken, but I feel it just changes the way you play and design lists.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to the points, right? Like, if a standard game's 2,000 points and Archaon is 1,500, maybe the fact he's unkillable is actually really shitty.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, maybe that doesn't make up for the fact that he's three-quarters hero. So
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes. I'm not going to comment on balance because I don't play this enough to.
Well, it's one of those things, right? Like play the objectives, don't try to kill the Death Star. And as you said, if he's a million points, who gives a shit, right? What's your take on the GW's policy change concerning PR and community involvement? We've answered this again from Jeff.
So many thumbs up.
Yeah, 350 thumbs up. Are you excited for the new rules in spite of the fact being a miss for a lot of players? From Captain Woodrow on Twitter.
In the chat as well. Yes, absolutely, 100%. I am thrilled that they're trying. Even if they miss the mark on it, it's awesome to see that the fact they have missed the mark is because they want to work with.
Yeah.
If they had not asked anybody what their questions were and just sent this out, it would have been kind of crappy.
It's not a miss. It's so you can't go from nothing to something and say it was a miss.
Yeah.
It could have been. I would say it fell short of the mark.
Yeah, so let's say
I
that.
wouldn't say it was a miss of the mark. And I'm 3 thumbs up, 4 thumbs up, whatever.
Yeah.
Next one is: do you think more folks will come back to AOS now that GW is releasing? That there is a GW released event mode from Andrea.
Yes. Yes.
I agree 100%.
The-
I know people that I've talked to that said when GW releases a competitive compact, I will come back. So it's got to happen.
And that's been my thing.
Yeah, he's back. Like literally, I couldn't get him to do an AOS show before this news dropped.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I think we've done one or two, but
No, we would have
less
done.
enthusiastic about it.
He's not as excited. Like he came to me and was like, I can't wait to use my. I think it was like your undead. He's like,
Yeah,
I can't
my
wait to
undead.
use my undead again. I think that's what it was.
Like, I'm actually hyped to brush the dust off my undead and play now that, like, once this tournament stuff comes out, I'm really happy to see that fantasy is gonna. And I say that as fantasy, as in Warhammer fantasy. Like, I know there's Kings of War, there's a bunch of other really good games, but I like my GW.
Yeah.
Like, I've got some Stockholm syndrome.
And I just like the fact that I have like a dozen fully painted armies in that universe, and I would like to have my friends want to play competitively again.
Exactly.
Because my biggest issue is I can find games, they're just not competitive. And there's a big difference between competitive AOS and fluffy AOS, right?
They're both
Especially
fun.
if you're taking a competitive
Yeah.
army.
They both have their own place, but yeah, you can't cross the two.
And I'm not that kind of player. I am a competitive guy at nature, and that's what it is. Do you think GW will be able to bring a balanced system from Randy?
Do I think so? Yes, I definitely do. They
Well, look
have,
who's working on it.
yeah, they have every tool at their disposal to make this one of the best tournament games they possibly could. Do I think they will? I have serious doubts about it. Everything they're doing in 40K leads me to believe that they are incompetent, bumbling boobs when it comes to trying to balance things. But the fact that they brought in outside help for this, people who are very, very passionate about the competitive community, leads me to believe that they have it's theirs to lose. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They have everything they need to make this incredibly successful. Um, yeah. Do I think they can? Yes. Do I think they will?
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. How many Maw Crushers is enough? Four or
Yeah.
five?
At least 10. Yeah.
I was like, that's yeah, it's.
Depends on points, obviously. I do an army nothing but Maw Crushers. I love that model.
I
It's
love them.
so cool.
I
It's
think
good
like if
too.
you're a collector, one of each, have them just in case, swap them out. Four and five, yeah, buy six Domus. You make big bucks, I think, right? All GT players said they would ignore the FAQ. Was the FAQ a hit or a miss? That's from Captain Woodrow again. So all GT players said they would ignore it. I would agree that some GT players said they would ignore it. I am a GT player and I would not ignore it. But so we've already answered whether it was a hit or a miss. But how does all GT players ignoring it affect you? Like, do you think that that's a fair statement to ignore the fact right up front, Logan, or maybe pick and choose what you like from it, or
I think it's the same as we've always had to do for not always. I say always as someone who's only been in this community about 3 years now, I guess. For 40K, we've always had to pick and choose what rules we do for GW. And I don't think that changes here, right? I think we need to reserve a lot of that judgment until the tournament pack comes out, because it's quite likely that a lot of this stuff won't, right? Like in the tournament pack, they could say that a save roll of a 1, regardless of modifiers, is always a failure. They could say that you measure everything from the base, and they could limit summoning. And if they do those, the game's pretty good. You add decent points to it, make it quasi balanced as much as you can.
yeah,
I think that's a good base. So I mean, it's just a few tweaks they need. Um, I mean, we've talked about the fact that I like they did this. I do agree that, and we even went through this as we were doing it. A fair bit of it is stuff that you just sort of have to ignore. It's good to get the official ruling on it. The clarification on this stuff is worth its weight in digital gold because it doesn't weigh anything. But yeah, I think there has to be pick and choosing for the competitive side of things. So I'm anxious, and using that word properly for once. I'm anxious to see what they do on the tournament side of it.
cool. And then the last one, well, the last one for pre-submitted. Then we go to the chat for a few predictions as to what gets points. Just the new stuff or old stuff too, from Tyler.
So this was actually answered on Facebook in very, very quickly, because that was one of the first questions that was asked when that announcement went up. And the answer is that everything, including all
Yeah.
the legacy discontinued models, everything's getting points.
Cool. So I guess we're gonna go to the chat. There's first ones.
Was that a glory hole reference? Yes.
Yes, it
It was.
was. Which one should I swap all my square bases over for round? I would say it depends what your goal is. If you're if you're gonna get like, do I say like just sit down and do your whole collection? No, that's just a waste of your resources for that time. I would say, and that's from Link. Sorry, I don't know if I said that, Link X. And so basically, what I would do is, if your next tournament army is going to be like Dark Elves or something, maybe I would convert that army over to round bases. Or maybe if like let's say you have a big Chaos army and you want to add some new demon stuff to it, maybe convert that over to round bases so that your new stuff doesn't really stick out as much. But I would never recommend to anybody to go in and change their whole collection overnight. I think that that's just a waste of resources and money.
Yeah.
I think, you could always do what I did. I said, well, Stormcast Eternals, they're the new thing. I just did them on round basis and I ignored all my old fantasy stuff. And I said, you know what, maybe I'll revisit one of these in the future. But I also didn't want, until a range is redone and has like a book release, which most of them do now with the Grand Alliance books, you don't know what size base to put them on. I didn't want to guess. I wanted to have my Grand Alliance order and look and be like, my Dark Riders are on this sized oval. I'm going to buy that sized oval and put it on there. And I know bases don't matter, but they matter to me.
Yeah, yeah. For any of the competitive pack matter. And I think that's a very good point. Is check your book and see what stuff comes on, because there have been a lot of surprises with that, like dwarves being on 32 mil. Which, if you're overlapping bases, doesn't matter. If you're not, it's a huge thing. So check that out. Now, my answer to this is, if you are doing this just for hobby, you don't care if you have to redo it in 6 months. Like, if you're literally just taking off a bare base and putting another bare base on just to match, whatever it is, I say go for it. And the reason I say go for it is Kings of War. If you're looking at playing multiple games with this, you're looking at swapping it out. Like, Fantasy's dead. Like, unless you're playing Ninth Age as well. And actually, no. Let me rephrase this. Regardless of, and this is off the top of my head, regardless of what fantasy miniature game you're playing, you can use round bases. If you are playing it with Ninth Age, Chris and I, or mostly Chris, I bought some as well, found a great guy, I think out of the UK, that made regimental bases for round bases. Basically, you slot them in and they sit there, kind of like the old War of the Rings stuff. So you can get those if you're playing Ninth Age. If you're playing Kings of War, they have official rules for unit filler, where you need half the unit size plus one. So if you have a unit of 40 models, you need at least 21 on it. So up your round bases down on something that's the right footprint for your base, for your unit size, and you're good to go there. No problem at all. And if you're playing Age of Sigmar, your round bases are the current thing. So
Yep.
I think if you don't care about the cost or the time investment, you're just doing it for shits and giggles. There's no downside.
Yeah, and then so a lot of the other things in that are just comments. Like a lot of people agree with us that points and rules make you want to play the game again. A lot of people rest in peace square bases, which I'm assuming means that you're probably going to go to rounds and enjoy it. So I don't think any other questions than that, right? Or
I think that was everything we got.
cool. So sounds good. So thanks for joining us, guys. For feedback, email canhammer.podcast@gmail.com for both of us, and I'll forward them on to Logan if you have any specific questions for him. Visit oneplusarmor.com for more information. There's links to all of our events we run, and as well as our YouTube channel where we do battle reports and lots of things like that. And feedback's always welcome on YouTube and or on our website if you want more or less or whatever. We also have a blog. It's called wargamersblog.com. Check that out. Friday releases, which are mostly by Nick as of late because I've been so swamped. But with that, have a good one, guys. Hope you enjoyed the Age of Sigmar content.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. Good night.